Hey, today I want to walk you through the process on installing a 67, 68 Cougar windshield. This also works for your 64.5 to 68 Mustangs. There's other videos on this, but I figure maybe I know a tip or two they don't, or my technique's a little different, and so hopefully this combined with other knowledge you've obtained will encourage you to do it yourself. A lot of installers are like, oh, I don't know about those old cars. It's not that hard. I did that 68 over there earlier today. Took me about 3 hours, only because the trim against the windshield and the reproduction dash pad were really kind of a mess. So start off with, if you have Chinese reproduction trim, first thing you're going to want to do is get rid of it. I mean, why would you want to sell that on eBay to somebody else and cause them misery? You need original stuff. It's the only way to go, period. We got restored stuff for Andrew's car that we're doing tonight. 2 tubes of this is enough. Other people might have a better product. This is a lot gooier than what was originally used. So put it in the comments below if you have something you like better than this 3M product. Get clips before you even start this project, because you'll lose a couple, or a couple will be rusted or broken. That's an original. This is reproduction. Whenever possible, use the originals, especially on the rear trim of the Cougars. They take a little more finesse, and it's nice to have the originals back there. The front's a little easier, so you use your reproductions on the front. And also, tip for the 69, well, all Cougar rear windows, especially the 6970s, the rubber molding is just a little bit too tall, and it's hard to get your trim to snap on. So what you do is buy the Mopar clips. They're just a little bit longer. Kurt at KTL gave me that tip. So that's a good tip. Let's see what else we need. We got my weed eater string here. I suppose you could use wire, or I know string works, but I like this because it's slickerier. It's slickerier. So you'll see why that matters here in a little bit. But let's get started. I'm going to lay my seal out, and note that the flange where we're going to put our strip caulk and our weed eater string is going to go in there. So this is in the inside of the car. To get started, I'm going to start on a corner and open it up. And this, like a lot of the jobs I do, we're not in a hurry. We're going to pretend we have all day long. And see how I'm bending it back? That opens it up, so you don't have to fight it as much. For my smallish gauge 13 feet plus of weed eater string, I like to start at the bottom. I feel like starting in the bottom just makes sense because the weight of the windshield is pushing down on your pinch weld. So hopefully this doesn't get too tangled up with the rope caulk. It shouldn't. Who says you can't push a string? This is much easier to feed in than nylon cord too. Also, you might want to, even before you start the project, if you know your car's had a little rust in the past, buy some of these screw-in studs, because once in a while one of these studs will rust off or break off, and we sell these little replacement ones where you drill it out and put a Phillips screw in place. You can put your clips in advance. That's what we've done here. You can also put them in later, and as long as you know where the studs are. And I'm going to have Andrew post a little diagram on our website, because these are generally where they're supposed to be. I mean, there's maybe a little variance at the factory. But I'm going to post a little diagram and you might even want to print that diagram and tape it on your windshield. Therefore, once this gets filled up with the 3M, not adhesive, but caulking, and you're having a hard time knowing where your clips are when you're putting your trim, you'll be able to look there and go, oh yeah, it's so many inches and so many inches and here, here, and here. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and lift this windshield into place. And we want this string on the inside. One thing I always struggle with is getting this exactly centered, because it matters. You really need it right there. So what I do is kind of guesstimate how far away it should be and make sure my rubber's pushed in. Take a visual here, then I just walk over to the other side and make sure it kind of looks the same. So we're trying to get our rubber lying on top of that pinch weld, and it looks like we're pretty darn close. Let's lay it on there, and if all is well, I'm just going to go pull that string, and magically it's going to flop in place. What do you think? Now notice you're seeing daylight here and it's not laying flat, and maybe another person would be helpful here. But keep in mind, all you have to do is barely get this rubber flange over the pinch weld, and then we can go and push the windshield down into place. And again, we're not in a hurry. We like this time in the garage. We got nothing better to do. We're just gonna enjoy our time.
And there is no right or wrong here. The only rule that we have here is that painting should make you happy. You should enjoy it. And if it does that, then it's good. Then it's good.
Okay, let's see if this side throws down as easy as the other. Now notice how I'm kind of just working this. See how I'm just doing, round and round? That helps on the corners. Now let's see what the other side's looking like. Before I do the top, I'm going to work this windshield down a little bit. And you probably didn't catch it on camera, but it just moves significantly. Now I'm going to do the other side. And we should see that gap in there close up a little bit. Look at that, it comes right down into place. Okay, now I'm going to finish pulling on my string. Ooh, there's our rope cock. We got to be really careful, because especially with a white headliner, you don't want any of this embedded in your moonskin texture. There's a little more rope cock trying to squirm its way out. Okay, let's push the seal onto the pinch weld all the way around. There you go. Okay, I like to cut my caulking tip at an angle, and earlier I did that on my other car, and I'm like, oh, that's too big a hole. So then we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on it, and look at that, I bent it just that easy. So we're going to get something to make this tip rigid, and if somebody sells a little attachment that makes this solid, I'd like to hear about it. But another way to do it is take a piece of scrap metal and just fashion it L out here, 90 degree there, and tape the whole thing up. But this is what I'm doing right now, and it always seems to work. Okay, this is a nice point to have extra hands, because they can use a little plastic tool to lift this. And the beauty about having somebody lift it is you can actually see how much caulk you're putting in there. I have to do it by feel. So initially it'll ooze out a little bit. My goal is to fill it up as much as I can without too much extra coming out. And of course this easily cleans up later when we're done. Yeah, I'm just doing it by feel. And it's better to get too much than too little. Okay, you know, these corners, there's a little more of a void, so you kind of want to dig that tip in there and make sure, maybe do a second pass and really get in those corners. And the clips are important too, and I'm going to go back with a screwdriver and manually work a little of this stuff in place just to make sure. Okay, I'm going to go back with a screwdriver, and it's just easier to do this than it is to take off your trim and fix it later because you have a leak. So I just really want to make sure this stuff is really embedded around my clips. So I'm going under the clip a little bit, trying to draw some of this under there, over it a little bit, and then using it as a putty knife and going over it. Just go to every clip and just kind of work it in there. It's probably overkill to do this, but I never test my windshields later to see if they leak. I just put the trim on and go, and haven't had a leaker for years. I got it a little thick here, so I'm going to take some of this excess and trowel it off. It's easier to do it now than later. Okay, I'm ready to start with my trim. On the front windshield trim, I put it on stick by stick. On the rear, I like to piece it together and put it on as one. I always like to start with the bottom, and you gotta go in and get under the clips. So before you even start, you need to look at this edge and make sure there's no warbles, you know, bend ins or outs. So like right here, I don't like that there. So when this got pulled off, it caught the clip and pooched it out a little bit. And you'd think the restoration service that I use would get that, but they focus more on this side than this side. So I'm going to carefully try to massage that back in place. Now again, it's important that you get this centered, so I'm going to index it. I'm going to look down the edge of this weather strip, and it's going to line up with the edge of this trim. And just to make sure I'm not off, I'm going to walk over to this side, and I want to see it line up basically with there. So I think I'm good, and I'm just going to try to get under those clips. This being a vinyl top car, I chose not to tape and paper it off to protect anything because I'm not going to scratch anything here, but I really should have put some blue painter's tape here. I'm pretty confident in my skills, but boy, one wrong move with this sharp edge trim and you could really be sorry. So the last car I did earlier today was an original paint car with pretty tired paint, so I was confident on that one. Okay, and we might even have to rotate this trim in to catch those clips. I try not to use a block of wood. I try to use my hands, but this being restored trim with reproduction clips, a little more finicky than the original clips with original unrestored trim on that one. So make sure your block of wood has a sharp 90 on it so it can catch that trim. And just to be safe, we're going to put a little tape on here to hopefully not scuff our paint. There we go. You can just feel it when it goes. And know that that big old gap and the way it sits away from the fender here isn't out of the ordinary. Do know that it follows the contour of the windshield. Just concentrating. That one went on nicely. That one went on nicely. On the pillar trims, it doesn't matter which order you go. So you go this one first and then either one of these. But notice this has got a female receptacle in it. So we're going to put it on first after we slide it together here and run it down on top of our clips. I think I'm good. Gotta make sure it's indexed with this one before we snap it in. And hopefully we can just bump it. Notice I'm not hitting the crown, but I'm just trying to hit the edge and bump it onto those clips. So let's get this started here. I'm not certain this is the absolute best product to use, but it's what I have on hand and seems to cut through this pretty easily without hurting paint or vinyl tops, although I wouldn't want to expose it too much to a brand new vinyl top. It might take the sheen off of it. So use it sparingly and get it off your vinyl top once you get it on. Okay, one thing I want to mention in conclusion is West Coast Classic Cougar isn't necessarily the best place to buy a windshield. I've found that at the major swap meets, they'll have a truck set up and they have them for $99 cash and carry, no shipping. Shipping's a big deal on a piece of glass like this. You can't send it UPS, it's got to be truck freight. Here's another deal I see all the time. On eBay, they'll sell them for $99, $129, I don't know. And then you'll pay for them and they'll tell you which Speedy Glass or whatever outlet to go pick it up at. And again, no shipping. Now, if you're buying it from us, one way to do it is to pick it up here at the shop. Again, avoid that shipping. Or if you're buying all the glass for a car, well, then truck freight might make sense and pay your $175 shipping or whatever it is. But just saying, we might not be the best place to buy a windshield from. So I hope that gives you some confidence on this install and some ideas on some products. And you can go and even help your neighbor friends do their cars now.